it goes back to 1854. Some of the greatest fights of all time were here. The first fight between Jack Dempsey and Gene Tunney for the heavyweight championship. They had 120,000 people at that fight in a rainstorm in 1926. When the climate of the sport changed in the 40s and 50s, Philly got most of the really good black fighters. Frazier came from South Carolina, Bob Montgomery came from South Carolina. Joey Giardello came from Brooklyn, but Benny Briscoe came from Georgia. They became fighters once they got here. They weren't fighters in the South. They didn't come here for any special reason other than to live here.
The New Horizon up on Broad Street.
I am interested in the revitalization of that place on North Broad Street, Blue Horizon.
Blue Horizon on Broad Street, where a lot of the big stars of today got their starts.
How many cities have #1 venues in the world? We beat out Madison Square Garden, Caesars Palace, MGM Grand, Atlantic City Convention Center. That's not bad for a small venue.
The Blue Horizon was one of the main spots in Philadelphia to develop talent. Big guy, Jay Russell Clark was the promoter that over 30 years. Joe Rowley became a legendary spot for boxing.
I start fights that other people finish. We rent an arena, we market the fight, we print up the posters, we sell the tickets, you fly them in, you put them up, you feed them, you get their medicals. And you hope you're going to sell enough tickets and sometimes get money from television to pay the costs and have a profit. I promoted my first fight, I was 22, and I promoted 15 fights in 8 months from September 30th the following May 18th. This was 1969, 1970, and I made the same $7,500 that I was making at the Bulletin, only I was having more fun. A year or so later, the contract of one of the big fighters in Philly was up for sale. His name was Benny Briscoe, and I found out by accident they were going to sell his contract for $3,300, and I got my brother-in-law to put up the money because we had all these young middleweights in Philly, and they were all very good, and to make it to the top, they would have to get past Briscoe, so whoever controlled Briscoe would control big-time boxing in Philly. So we signed Briscoe, never realizing that Briscoe himself would turn into the attraction. He fought 3 times for the world title, and that gave me, it sounds negative, but it gave me control of Philly. From there, we went to Atlantic City in the 80s when we left the Spectrum, because cable TV was coming in 79, and the casinos were coming in 79. So at that point, the days of the big arenas were over for monthly fights. So we spent basically the 80s in Atlantic City. And then in the 90s, we came back to Philly and rejuvenated the Blue Horizon. And we went there for 10 straight years, a sellout. I mean, when Rocky came out in 1976, which was right on the heels of the big Olympic success that year in Montreal with Sugar Ray Leonard, it was a tremendous shot for boxing.